hit her when you broke her legs and you did whatever you did, were you satisfied? Did you go and celebrate after that? Had Maribel done anything wrong to you for her to deserve that? Did the cries of my child never reach you? Wherever you are, you will never have peace. You will never have peace. In the name of Jesus, you will never see peace.
Maribel will always make you smile. We hope she knows how much we all miss her in the field of football as our beloved and able goalkeeper.
Surely it has been a challenge to us to explain what really happened. But we raise this all to God because we know nothing passes God. And one day, one time, we shall know actually what happened to our daughter.
How well can a human being become such that to set out such an outrageous design to murder an innocent, defenseless young child of only 9 years?
Is it possible that in our community we have developed this I don't care attitude? This is not my child attitude. It's not my work attitude. It is.
Assurance, we want to take your commitment, and we want to believe that from today henceforth, we mothers, as we release our children to go to school, because we cannot say we love them in the house and not go to school. They still have to go to school. They still have to go out on those streets. Yes, the people who are perpetrators of these children are people who are not children, but children are also innocent. We want to ask for your continuous intervention, especially on security of our children.
September 6th, 2018, 5 p.m. The Consolata Primary School bus made its regular afternoon run through Meru Town. It was a Catholic church-owned school on Total Road, what people in Meru would call a mid-tier school, the type of school where people who had money sent their children. At the Total Petrol Station junction along the Meru-Nanyuki highway near Makutano, the bus stopped. This was a known drop-off point. Children who lived in that part of town got off there. It happened before. It happened most school days. Maribel Kapolon was 9 years old, standard 4. She stepped off the bus with her classmates. She had her school bag. She was wearing her uniform. Then someone called her name. And she knew the voice. She knew the face. There was no hesitation because there was no reason for alarm. This was someone she knew. This was someone who had picked her up before. This was the man she called uncle. Her classmates watched her walk towards him. They did not run for help. They did not shout because it looked like every other time. Maribel Kapolon did not come home that evening. To support our channel, subscribe, like, comment what shocked you the most, and share this video. Now, let's dive in. Dark Echoes 254. Before this became a story about a murder, it needs to be a story about a child. Maribel Kapolon lived in Milimani, the government quarters in Meru Town, reserved for senior civil servants. The house sat on a road where if you walked to the end of the street, the first address you'd reach was the Meru County Police Commander's office. A little further, the county commissioner's residence. It was that kind of neighborhood, official, structured, safe, in theory. She was 9 years old and in standard 4 at Consolata Primary School. By all accounts, from people who knew her, she was an easygoing child, sociable, the child who moved comfortably between adults and peers, who responded when she was spoken to, who trusted the people she had been given reason to trust. Those who knew Maribel described her as warm. This is a child adults don't worry about at social gatherings because she handled herself well. She had an older brother. He also went to Consolata. Their father, John Masai Kapolon, had been estranged from the family. The children's surname came from him, but the household was their mother's and had been for a long time. Maribel was Carol's only daughter. The specific weight of that, it becomes relevant later and it stays relevant. Every school morning, Maribel put on a uniform and got on the Consolata bus. Every afternoon, it dropped her at the Total Petrol Station junction. It was a routine, a pattern. It was ordinary, a working pattern for a working mother who relies on when the alternative is bringing a child to court. Caroline Kemei was, by every professional metrics, a woman who had earned her position. She was the senior resident magistrate at Githongo Law Courts, the highest-ranking officer at the station, which sat about 15 kilometers outside Meru Town. Her entire career had been built around one task: looking at evidence, hearing testimony, and determining what was true. She was also a mother, and she was managing both of those things alone. When Maribel did not come home on the evening of September 6th, Carol reported her missing at Meru Town Police Station at 7 p.m., less than 2 hours after the school bus dropped off. She did not wait, nor assumed Maribel had simply gone to a friend's house. She knew something was wrong. What she did not know yet was how wrong.
I always thought that I would see her come back to me. It was never to be. I was told she was found dead. It was the worst moments in my life. I've cried. I've asked God so many questions. I asked God why I could just watch as my daughter was being killed.
To understand what happened to Maribel Kapolon, you have to go back to where her mother's relationship with Benson Kimathi Marangu began. Caroline Meru was posted at Maua Lokot when she first encountered Marangu. This was around 2013. He was a prison warder at Kangeta Prison at the time, a facility in that same general area of Meru County. Their paths crossed the way paths cross in government service Kenya. Shared geography, similar professional cycle, the smallness of a county town where everyone at a certain standing eventually knows everyone else. Sources close to both of them said they had each been in separate relationship when things began between them. By the time they came together properly, both had moved on from those previous partners. It was not in the beginning a secretive or complicated thing. There were two people who found each other. The relationship was on and off across several years, intermittent. The nature of postings in Kenya public service means people move. Carol moved. Marangu stayed in the Meru area, but he remained a presence, consistent enough that Maribel knew him, consistent enough that he had a role in the rhythm of that household. He picked Maribel up from school. He drove her. He was there at the house in the language a 9-year-old uses to map her world. He was uncle. That word, uncle, is not incidental. It is the whole architecture of what happened later, the trust that word represents, and the way it was weaponized. On April 10th, 2017, Benson Kimathi Marangu retired from the Kenya Prison Service. He had entered the service in 2005, 12 years. After April 2017, he was no longer a warder, he was a former warder, but the relationship with Carol continued, or at least intermittently. The access to Maribel continued. Then came August 2018. They took a trip together to Kapsabet. It should have been unremarkable. It became the beginning of the end. When Carol introduced Marangu to people she knew in Kapsabet, she introduced him as a friend, not a partner. Not the man she was seeing, just a friend. He noticed it. He did not say anything in the moment, but he noticed. When they returned to Meru, the atmosphere between them had shifted. He began spending nights at her brother's house instead of hers. Not because he had somewhere better to be, as a statement. Then, at some point, he went back to her house and he found another man there. A teacher, to be precise. What followed were arguments that have the texture of something that had been building for a long time and had finally found an excuse to break open. Insults, accusation, and then silence. Communication stopped completely. The relationship was over. Carol had moved on, or was trying to. Marangu had a different understanding of what that ending required. He was 45 years old. He was a retired prison officer with no current employment. He had spent years in a relationship that he had understood to mean something that Carol had apparently decided, without formal announcements, was finished. She had introduced him as a friend. She had moved on to a teacher. She had not been sufficiently afraid of what he might do with that. In his mind, something had to happen. What he chose to make happen was this. On September 6th, 2018, he drove to the Total Petrol Station junction on the Meru-Nanyuki highway. He waited for the school bus. He called the 9-year-old girl by her name, and she came to him because she had no reason not to. 11 days. That is how long Carol Kemei did not know where her daughter was, did not know if she was alive, did not know what was happening to her. 11 days of that, while also being by profession a person required to sit in a courtroom and disperse justice. The search began immediately. Police were alerted on the evening of September 6th. The OB entry was filed at 7 p.m. The Meru County Police Commander David Kirui was notified. Investigators began working the case from the first night. Very quickly, a name surfaced: Benson Kimathi Marangu, the former boyfriend, the man who had picked Maribel up before, the man the family knew Carol had been having problems with. He was the obvious first thread to pull. But Marangu could not be located immediately, and while police searched, the days kept moving. Then came the phone call. A man named Francis Otudo contacted the family. He said he had Maribel. He was holding her. He wanted 500,000 shillings, $500,000 for her return. There are few moments in the experience of a parent with a missing child that are more brutal than a ransom call, because on one hand, it is confirmation of your worst fears. Someone has your child deliberately, and they're using her as a transaction. On the other hand, and this is the part that makes it even more cruel, it is also the first evidence that she might still be alive. If someone is asking for money, there is something to give money for. Carol did not pay. The family, they didn't pay. The caller, he also didn't follow up. Francis Otudo, it would later be established in court, did not have Maribel Kapolon. He had never had her. He had heard about the abduction, a story that was already drawing public attention, and he had decided to exploit it. He saw a desperate mother, and he calculated that her desperation could be converted into cash. He was wrong about the cash though. He was not wrong that she was desperate. The days passed. September 7th, September 8th, September 9th. Each morning that Maribel was not found was another day of searching without answers. Another day of a house that held her things, her school bag, her shoes, her bed, without holding her. On September 16th, 2018, 10 days after she was taken, Maribel Kapolon's body was found in Gitoro Forest in the Upper Imenti area of Meru County. She was lying face down. The postmortem that followed confirmed she had been struck on the head multiple times. The injuries were severe. They were fatal. But the examination also revealed something that the brief newspaper summaries of this case do not linger on. This was not a quick death. Police said the manner of her death indicated she had been tortured. There were cuts on her thighs. One of her arms showed signs that appeared consistent with acid burns. Part of her head had no hair. She was just 9 years old. She was in standard 4. She called him uncle. And he did that to her. Not because of anything she had done, not because of anything she was, because of a woman who had introduced him as a friend instead of a boyfriend. That is the complete documented logic of this case. A man's wounded ego and a child's life.
So shule zilikuwa zimefunguliwa. So my nephew akaenda shule. Maribel alikuwa anasoma consulate. Yes. Yes. Akaenda shule. Karudi jioni akichiu bolga. Alikuwa anachiu bolga. Nikamuuliza ulitoa wapi bolga? Akaniambia angolikia mtaninunulia.
The murder of Maribel Kapolon did not stay inside a police file. It broke open publicly in a way that every few child murder case in Kenya do. Part of that was the nature of who Caroline Kemei was. A magistrate, a member of the judiciary, a figure of institutional significance. The system tends to pay attention when one of its own is struck, but it was also something else. It was the specific brutality of using a child as the instrument of revenge against a woman who had tried to end a relationship. It was the fact that the child had trusted the man. It was the fact that she had called her uncle. People understood what had happened and they were furious. On September 18, 2018, 2 days after the body was found, Ripples International and the Center for Rights Education and Awareness organized a march through Meru Town. Mothers led the procession from Ntere grounds to the Meru DCI offices. They submitted a petition. They wanted answer. They wanted speed. They wanted someone to be held responsible, and they wanted it to be visible. The Law Society of Kenya Meru chapter also took to the streets. Lawyers marched from the High Court to police offices. LSK President Allen Gishuhi issued a national statement from Nairobi calling on the government to urgently address the security of judicial officers and their families. Benson Kimathi Marangu and Francis Otudo were arrested within days of the body being found, one in Nairobi and one in Meru. They were placed in custody at Meru GK prison while DCI investigators completed their work. The Meru Chief Magistrate, Hannah Ndungu, granted investigators 10 days to finish building the file. She noted the nature and complexity of the case and the significant public interest it had drawn. The prosecution was represented by Harrison Kiarie. The suspects were defended by Eliud Mutuma. When the case was ready to be heard, a fundamental problem represented itself. Maribel's mother was the senior resident magistrate heading Githongo Law Courts, a station that falls directly under the jurisdiction of Meru High Courts. The case could not be tried in the same court system where the victim's mother served. The conflict of interest was obvious and structural. Justice Robert Limo ordered the matter transferred to Chuka High Court, citing this reason explicitly. The case could be heard in Tharaka Nithi County rather than Meru. The transfer should have been straightforward. It was not. When the case first arrived at Chuka High Court, the file had gone missing. Justice Limo had not seen it. The file had been brought to Chuka, but Meru High Court had not sent the corresponding paperwork to Meru GK prison to arrange transport of the accused. The hearing scheduled for that day did not proceed. The case stalled before it even started. This is worth saying plainly. The family of Maribel Kapolon, while managing their grief, while Carol Kemei continued to work in a courtroom that was 40 minutes from the station where her daughter had disappeared, they also had to navigate a system that lost the file, a system that required follow-up, a system that did not move with the urgency the moment demanded. Eventually, the case was properly constituted at Chuka High Court. The prosecution assembled 22 witnesses, and then the trial began. The case that the prosecution built against Benson Kimathi Marangu was not complicated in its architecture. It did not need to be. The evidence did not require elaborate reconstruction. It required the court to follow what was plainly in front of it. First, Marangu had a documented, established history of picking Maribel Kapolon up from school, specifically from the Total Petrol Station junction on the Meru Nanyuki Highway. This was not a new arrangement invented for September 6th. He had done it before enough time that her classmates did not find it unusual when they saw them together that afternoon. Secondly, he was the last person confirmed to have been seen with Maribel alone. After she walked towards him at the junction, she is not recorded by any witness as being seen with anyone else. The trial of her movement ends at that junction with him. Thirdly, the motive was documented, not speculated. The relationship breakdown between Marangu and Carol Kemei was recent, specific, and bitter. The argument over the Kapsabet trip, the friend introduction, the teacher at the house, they were non-events. People close to both of them were aware of what had happened. The timing of the abduction, just weeks after the final breakdown, was not coincidental. The prosecution argument to the court was this: Benson Kimathi Marangu did not abduct and kill Maribel Kapolon for any reason connected to Maribel. She was not the target. She was the method. The target was Carol Kemei. The plan was to take from Carol the thing she could not replace. As for Francis Otudo, the man who had called the family during the search and demanded 500,000 shillings, the prosecution's case against him was different in character. He had not abducted Maribel. He had not killed her. He had heard about a missing child whose mother was a magistrate, and he had decided that the family terror was an opportunity. The court examined his role separately. He was not Marangu's accomplice in the murder. He was, as Justice Gitaro would put it, an opportunist. A man who looked at grieving family and saw a transaction. The trial ran across several years. Filed in 2018, had in Chuka, and concluded in October 2022. 4 years between Maribel being taken and a court delivering a verdict. 4 years of Carol Kemei continuing to work in the judiciary that was supposed to protect her family. On October 25, 2022, Justice Lucy Gitari delivered the ruling at Chuka High Court. She read it on behalf of Justice Robert Limo, the presiding judge who had ordered the case transferred to Chuka 4 years earlier. The judgment was direct. All evidence provided in court proved beyond reasonable doubt that Benson Kimathi Marangu had murdered Maribel Kapolon in September 2018 after the breakdown of his relationship with her mother. He was 45 years old when the verdict was delivered. Justice Gitari sentenced him to 40 years in prison. It is not enough though. It cannot be enough. There is no outcome from a court, no sentence in any law that is enough for a 9-year-old girl who was called by her name at a petrol station and did not come home. But there is this episode, this recording, this specific deliberate act of saying her name out loud. She is not a statistic, nor a footnote in a report on gender-based violence or child safety or judicial officer security in Kenya. She is not a case number filed at Chuka High Court. She is Maribel, and she was here, and she mattered, and we are saying so. If you enjoyed this case, make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment down below. And if you have a case that you feel should be covered, comment it down below and we will look into it. Otherwise, stay safe, stay guided.